So the floor is yours, and we will take a first round of questions. Please raise your hand and tell me your name.
Okay, Assalamu alaikum. Firstly, thank you for both lectures. They were amazing and really hit the spot on what is sorely needed to be discussed. I was just wondering if either Professor Ramadan or either speakers could shed light on the question that I asked Muawid, in the sense that was there an intended revealed will, or if Allah had some intention for the what appears to be ambiguity on the issues of women in the Quran, is there wisdom behind it, or is it where we employ intellectual humility perhaps, and do the best that we can to resolve these issues? Is there any way of understanding the wisdom behind the issues that we're presented with? And just to go off the point that the last question I had in the previous session, I'm just wondering even if it is a Western, even if it was born in the West, feminism, I'm just wondering, it's just a comment really, even if it is born in the West, I mean, if it is inherently good, what is wrong with adopting it? I mean, if it's a universal problem, then surely there is no smoke without fire. It doesn't matter whether it's Islamic feminism or a Western feminism, the problem exists and it needs addressing. So, that was just a comment really. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. First of all, jazakallah khair for all that you all have taught us so far over the past couple of days. Just learning about Maqasid. Oh, sorry. I think because I have a mic in front of me. Just as we've been learning about Maqasid, using Maqasid as a means to have discussions within our communities, we should, I think Dr. Ramadan, you said a few days ago that we should also turn around and have discussions with the Western society as well. And quite often we're faced within the Western society where women are questioned about their status in society and are said to be oppressed. And a few years ago, Dr. Ramadan, you said that in a debate whether Europe has failed the Muslim community, you stated that just as it is against Islam to force women to wear hijab, it is also against human rights to force women to remove the hijab as well. And in Europe, we're faced with the constant question about banning the veil. So as a community, the Muslim community, as well as an individual, how do we respond to the Western community in the banning of the veil or taking rights away from us as Muslim women within a Western context, keeping Maqasid in mind?
Assalamu alaikum. My question actually kind of flips the other questions, is that I always see Islam as feminism, because it's about human rights and feminism is about equal rights between genders. And so when we look at it from the secular feminism, I almost look at it from the Wadud's diagram. They put the self and then they put the vertical as man instead of God. And so this idea of reconciling between secular and Islamic, is that even possible? Because I know on a basic value system you can, but if their vertical is man, that doesn't seem like that's not our objective. Our objective is God consciousness and returning to God. So how do we reconcile between the vertical and the horizontal in terms of secular and Islamic?
As I said to you in private, that in Al-Ghanouchi, once I read for him that some of the opinion for the early scholars, and maybe intellectually they were, it was their way of seeing things at that time in that context, and they reached certain conclusions that us now, because of the environment when we are in, or maybe because of maybe we have different ability, or maybe we are intellectually maybe ahead of them. I'm sorry if that we're able to reach a different conclusions.
I have 3 questions. Should I just ask one? Okay. So for Dr. Fathi, you mentioned the hadith about the women holding leadership roles. and you said that it was perhaps just a comment and not really a hukm. But there are also other hadith. There are also other hadiths that have to do with women. But the Ahl al-Hadith have used it to derive ahkam from. So is it the Maqasidi purpose to say, to bypass certain hadiths to say that, oh yeah, these were comments, but then these are okay to derive ahkam from? And then are we saying that essentially, I mean, Hadith al-Bukhari is very revered in deriving ahkam. So are we jeopardizing the weight of Sahih al-Bukhari? My second question is also with the terminology in the فَضْرِبُوهُنَّ in the Quran. You said that it was perhaps. Do we use maqasid to derive interpretations or new meanings of terms in the Quran to kind of justify our maqasidi intention? So, مثلا in the darb incident, does it bring us closer to the intention, or does it bring us closer to the correct interpretation in terms of moving towards the Sharia? So when you say darb, like, do you mean that, oh yeah, does it mean it's most likely not going to be physical hitting, but perhaps it's just like a light stroke, or perhaps it's not even hitting, you just walk away. From a maqasidi point of view, how do we pick which one it is? And what is the ultimate intention of picking which form of darb it is? Thank you.
My question again is going to be speaking about like the ideal and the reality, and let me ask the question and accordingly we're going to understand. For example, the fact that a man can marry with non-Muslims who are from Ahl al-Kitab, the woman from the book, while the woman cannot. And the reason behind that, the rationale behind that, as much as I know at least, is that the man can bring up the child as Muslim, while the woman cannot. While the reality now, at least, I don't know before, was it like this or not, whether this rationale is really the divine intention or not, but that what I got from at least the books that I read, the reality say no, sometimes the vice versa happens. So what my question is, should the man be really in charge since it's the rationale? So accordingly in the marriage, then the man should be more in control so that he can bring up the child accordingly? Or because on the other side, you're going to find some feminist approach that say, no, like it's equal relationship, there is no such a thing, and accordingly, you cannot say that it's justified, that such a marriage is justified. So, yeah, that's my question.
I have a question about the two lectures of this morning. Feminism is such a strong word, and I'm a little bit ill at ease with the way we use it. Why do we need to talk about Islamic feminism, which, if I understood, was created to fight injustice and oppression? But this is what Islam and the texts are for. I feel like we are trying to Islamize every component in our society, like, for example, finance and now feminism. And I'm asking the question, is really those Islamization of the component of our society are really more ethical than the things we have now? Why should we fight injustice in gender and not injustice in general? That was, I'm afraid of this dichotomy with the gender issue. Thank you.
The notion of Dr. Fethi about men, are we, so because there is a confusion, do we question the text Allah's order, or do we question the human interpretation? How can our questions in general, okay, be a sort of an enriched or an enrichment-oriented questions, i.e. we are not specialists, so that we maybe even question the system. And at the same time, we can inform the system. So how can you clarify the dichotomy, Allah's order or the text's order, and the human interpretation or human contribution, and how can we be more beneficial to this question?
It's with great pleasure that I would like to share with you what I think. It might be right, it might be wrong. This is my assessment and my thought, and I hope it will be, inshallah, beneficial. Of course, for the first question with regards to the creation and the test, and of course, what is the wisdom behind testing and things like that. First of all, we have to acknowledge in the Islamic context and tradition that the creation of a human being, man and woman, it was for a purpose to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's one direction. The other direction in the worldly life is to be as a Khalifa, not the deputy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but an upright person who really contribute to the betterment of their life while they are living. And therefore, there will be lots of tests and in different styles. Sometimes test in health, sometimes test with money, sometimes test within the family for having, for example, deviant children, having, lacking some money, and so on and so forth. So the creation has a purpose. Then, in the course of life, there are tests, and of course, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't leave us, the human beings, unguided, but Allah sent messengers and also Sharia to clarify, and the whole life is kadh towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's a struggle, and therefore you may face situations, but keep the main objective always between your eyes, as we said, to fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and please Him. This is my answer for the first question. The second question, which is very interesting, that is the means of Maqasid, or the Maqasid as means of discussion. In fact, the question was directed to Dr. Tariq, but I will share with you my view. Of course, he will talk about this later on. In the West, because the sister was, I think, very much concerned with what we do in the current lifestyle in the West, where Muslims are really challenged by many challenges, including, for example, some sorts of discrimination when they wear hijab or they wear, Islamic dress code and things like that. When they act, also when they get married, when they rear their children in their own way, and so on and so forth. So here, I will say, because I also lived in the West for quite some time. I lived in Germany, and also I visit most of the European countries, and I interact with many Muslims. So I think the best way is to be as you are as a Muslim. Don't change, make yourself, as a changeable person. In every context, you change your identity. Keep your identity, interact with the reality in a confident way, and of course, it's a struggle. It's a struggle. You have a challenge in some contexts, and of course, you have to face that challenge confidently, and of course, keep with the group, the Muslim group, and also try to develop, the right means within the right context in the West, and benefit also from many, laws and injunctions to strengthen your position and also advance your fortune in the West generally. And there are many good cases. The most recent one is in France, in the United States, for example, the CARE organization, and so on and so forth. They are very advanced, and of course, they can use many platforms to advance their position and protect themselves, and most importantly, is to behave as a citizen of those countries. Not because I have seen many Muslims, one leg is in Europe and the other leg is in their home country. This is not good. This is the wrong way how to advance. You can think about developing something in your country, having a house, for example, or whatever you want to like. But basically, think and also work where you might be, whether in France, Germany, Australia, New Zealand, America, whatever, wherever. So that's my approach to that one. Somebody mentioned Amina Wadud, and I was listening to the brothers here when he was responding to Dr. Mawahab, and he said he disagreed many times with what Amina Wadud was saying, especially when she wrote her book on Quran and women. And of course, I think all of us remember the act that she did in 2005. Do you remember that act? When she led the prayers, the mixed gender prayer in the United States, in 2005. And I personally see that, yes, I agree with this brother, that that direction is not really, appropriate in the most standard Muslim understanding of the teachings of Islam and basically the Maqasid approach. The brother is here, yes, he shared with me when I just finished the talk about our perception of the early Muslims' understanding of the texts. And I totally agree with him because I did read Sheikh Rashid al-Ghannouchi's book about al-mar'a بين تعاليم القرآن وتقاليد المجتمع. And he did also lots of criticism. By the way, he wrote the book when he was in the prison. And he was imprisoned by Bourguiba at that time. He wrote that book in the prison, and he did lots of references to modern works of tafsir, most importantly the two tafsir, At-Tahrir wa-Tanwir and Fi Dhilal al-Quran. And he did come with very, very good book, though it's small, and it was published by many publishers. One of them is from Syria. So the book, as brother said, yes, it's true. The early Muslims, they did their best into explaining the different texts, or whether the hadith or the Quran, and of course within their lifestyle and within the traditions that were going on at that time. Of course, they came to certain conclusions. Not all conclusions, this is very important, not all conclusions are wrong. Because by the systematic understanding of the tafsir and the science of Quran and the science of hadith, alhamdulillah, I can with degree of confidence say that up to perhaps more than 90%, fine. But few things that are not right, they are there. It's their understanding, it's their ijtihad. We don't blame them and say you are all rubbish or everything is not good and we can't take from you anything because you did a mistake here or there. No, but we have to acknowledge that they did a wonderful job in terms of compiling, editing, thinking, and so on and so forth. There are certain minor problems. It's our responsibility to acknowledge that by some standards we disagree with them, but we have to fix those problems and move forward. So this is my response to this. Yes, the sister that she asked about the hadith of wilaya and appointing women to position of power, leadership, and so on and so forth. Yes, the hadith it's hadith sahih. Unfortunately, hadith sahih, but the problem is always with the interpretation, because they took that specific context where Prophet ﷺ was commenting on a specific event, and then they generalized it and applied it to all. And that was, or unfortunately, it was done by scholars like, for example, Al-Tabari, like Ibn Kathir, like Al-Qurtubi in his Al-Jami' li-Ahkam al-Quran, and Ibn al-Arabi also in Ibn al-Arabi in Al-Jami' li-Ahkam al-Quran, and Al-Qurtubi in Ahkam al-Quran. All of them, they admit, even Ibn al-Qayyim al-Jawzi, he also said that no, women shouldn't, be appointed as leaders and so on and so forth. So this, coming to you, sister, this hadith is just a general comment. I did mention this. It's not the matter of flexifying the hadith or the text so that it suits our interpretation. No, this is not the way, because even in the text, the Quran and hadith, there are plenty and many texts, and even the general maqasid of the Sharia go against this interpretation. That's why we reject it. It's not because this and that. But it's because of the methodology and because of the availability of other texts and also other understandings that are more systematic and more acceptable and supported with good arguments. Yes, again, the sister who asked about dharb or beating or hitting or striking, whether it leads to the correct or not, I think I have clarified this. But most importantly, I would like to say that within the Maqasid context, it was that specific incident. It was in one verse of the Quran, and it's exception of the exception of the exception. Is it clear? We are talking about a very minor category or percentage of women, not all women. This is the first thing that we have to acknowledge. Number two, we are talking about the nashes women, and the sister also clarified, and she will talk about the categories and the conditions of the nushuz. Of course, it's not nushuz, it's based on the hawa or lust of the husband of the man, but based on the sharia again and the maqasid al-sharia. So dharb, as I said, amazingly, I found one old classical scholar, that is Ata ibn Abi Rabah, and also one of the modern scholars, Ibn Ashur. They are totally against dharb or beating or hitting, and they said it shouldn't be done, as now life is not, that's the mean that may lead to strengthening the the bond within the family. What is the rationale behind the adoption? The brother who, about the zawaj from other religions or interfaith. No, they call it zawaj interfaith. Yes, it is. The injunction is there. In the Quran and in Islam generally, men are allowed to marry from another faith. Another faith. It's not without faith, because this is the scholars, they said. From another faith, at least there is a component of religion, a belief in a religion there, and then the guidance. Kitabiyat, yes, the people of the book. Yes, and also it is there is a hadith actually, yuladul mawludu ala al-fatra, a human being will be born on the nature, of a human beings. فأبواه يهودانه أو يمجسانه أو ينصرانه. So the process of shaping the mentality, the personality, whether religious or not, or brave or whatever, it's in the hands of both of them. But generally, by practice, the leadership, as we said, generally is given to man, and man has many ways of influencing the direction of the family. This doesn't mean that forcefully, without any discussion or without any knowledge. But the fuqaha, they say, that, for example, if a Muslim woman, for example, marry a non-Muslim man, of course, basically and generally, she cannot influence the whole family life. She will contribute in a way or another, but basically she will not, influence the family direction, and therefore there will be a fear of the direction or the religiosity of the children, whether they will be Muslim or otherwise. Justice for gender, yes, I agree with you, the sister here. She did raise a very interesting question with regards to the justice. I will talk about this, inshallah. Yes, I 100% agree with you. We sometimes we go in the direction that we talk about gender justice, fairness, sameness, likeness, and all this stuff, and we forget the most important thing, that is justice itself for human beings, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guaranteed it in the Sharia, and inna akramakum indallahi atqakum. There is no differences between man and woman, but the taqwa is the most guiding criteria for life, and therefore gender, justice or rights, it's within the framework of justice in Islam generally. Final point, the last, the sister who asked about questioning the text or human interpretation, I think I think we shouldn't generalize, make the text as text like that. There are certain texts that are qat'iyat. Especially qat'iyat, you know, the definitive, there is no discussion, we can't question them. They are related to basically the aqidah, the creed, and certain other things. So those types of texts, whether in hadith or in the sunnah, that they are related to major issues in the sharia, and they are clearly designed and they are out of interpretation, they are clearly defined, we don't talk about that one. We talk about the areas where, whether in the social context, the cultural context, gender context, religious context, transactions, business, whatever, where there are areas where we can have arguments and debates and come to conclusions. Therefore, here in this context, the best methodology, first of all, is to look into all the texts in the Quran and the Sunnah, and this is called the thematic interpretation of the issue. Let's say, for example, you have an issue with inheritance or with gender relation or with anything that is, for example, business problem and things like that. One of the best methodology is to, first of all, gather all those verses and hadith which are related to this issue, and then you start analyzing and reading them, not according to what you think, but first of all, you have to have some, conditions. Of course, you should understand the language. You have to have, the systematic understanding of the issue, and then you have to refer to the systematic previous understanding so that you can assess and accept or reject, and also as our center also works, is also to understand the reality, the waqa'. And the waqa' now, the context is so complicated, where sometimes we need sociologists, psychologists, political scientists, bioethicists, and doctors, engineers. Sometimes that's the reality. It's very complicated. One person or one professional really cannot tackle all the issues. And for this reason, you can see now the Fiqh Council is recruiting or is applying this system of having many scholars from different backgrounds, so that they come close to the best ruling or understanding or fatwa regarding any issue. And therefore, fatwa is not mulzima, is not compulsory that you take it. Hukum, court order, is compulsory because it's order from the court. But a fatwa is up to you. If you like it, you take it. If you don't like it, yes, it's ijtihad from one council on one person, and if you don't take it, you can search for another one. And the last thing is that, of course, I think sometimes what we can say, and this is my final remark with regards to this issue, sometimes, unfortunately, people are, don't put the right effort to, come to the right conclusion. And one of this is just sometimes people, they just surf or browse the internet or listen to a video or read one hadith or one ayah and come to a conclusion and a decision without even investigating properly the issue. And this is not among the good character of a Muslim who is supposedly a man or woman, really to search for the truth and also to utilize the proper means. Thank you.
Thank you. I will just respond to two main questions. I will only respond to two main questions here, and I will leave all the questions related to the understanding of Maqasid to Shawqi and Dr. Tariq. About there was a question about feminism, whether you call whatever you call yourself, like it is about women oppression. So in this point, it like as I said, it's feminism is a theory in the making. So it depends on how you define it at the end for yourself, and it depends on like how you define it. Also, again, is depending on from where you are coming. What is your source? What are your means? What is your final objective? So
it depends on how you define it, and whether you agree with the concept that it is a Western terminology and we don't need to use it, and we have to build our own kind of terminologies and use it instead. So there are a lot of intakes in this. But it is about the politics of naming. So if you say like the way you see it. So one of the approaches which called for dialogue, called to go beyond this politics of naming. You go beyond it. You go to see the objective. You go what you want to achieve at the end, and you open the space for the discussion and for the dialogue. And there are two questions related to each other: the idea of reconciliation between the two approaches, secularism, that individualism, and the Islamic paradigm, and also related to it the question of Islamization of knowledge. So we have Islamic finance, and we have gender Islamic feminism, and we put the word Islamic, and I think Dr. Tariq can best reply on this part, and he has a lot of lectures on this part specifically. But here what I want to say that as this is kind of adaptation, like you adapt to the current situation by adopting this individualistic and liberal understanding of feminism. There are two completely different approaches. They are completely different. The source is different, and so the objective is different, and the means is different. So, like you need to be aware of that. Sometimes I can understand why it is used or referred to by some of the Muslim feminists, why they are referring to the human rights as and they know that it is coming from it is another paradigm. It is another paradigm. So why they are referring to it? In some cases, women are in it because it is the one which is acknowledged internationally as a reference point for taking action. Okay, for taking action whenever women are discriminated against. Internationally, it is accepted. So in some vulnerable situation, when women are in some vulnerable situation, they need to use it. They need to use it. I can give you an example. And this is what I was trying to say. I can give you an example for what I'm saying. So in 2002, we have Islamic government in Sudan, which promoting the Islamic State. So in 2002, the governor in the Khartoum, the capital of Sudan, the governor just issued a law overnight forbidding women from working in hospitality industry, in gas stations, and in some other jobs. Okay, by saying that. We are exposing our women, and we need to protect our women, and this is as per our culture, and this is as per our religion. The thing is that the women movement in Sudan was very strong. It started in the first woman who get in the parliament in Sudan was in 1968. And she get in the parliament not because of affirmative action, come with the 25 women, go to the parliament, here are your seats. No, it's not like that. She has been elected in the graduate circles with men and women, and she get in the parliament. So, like the question about women employment and the right of women to employment and education, like this is a story which has done since the 60s. We don't know to reinvent the wheel again on this. So what happened when we issued that law? There were the meetings for following up on the World Development Goals. So and following up on the Millennium Development Goals. There were committees of women who are working in international organizations and some governmental organizations. And then he issued this law. So what they did, they make a committee, they composed a committee immediately against this decision. And they use many strategies. Those who are working in international organizations, they always use their networks, sending to all the international, to get the support of all international human rights organizations, that this is happening in Sudan. Okay? Those who are working internally, they start, talking to the media. Okay? Because actually he issued the decision, and then he asked the police to do it immediately, to implement it immediately. So there were some women who are selling food in the streets, very vulnerable women. They just come and just collect their stuff and this, and take everything and let them go to do whatever. And they are holding, they are feeding their families, these women. So he did not consider anything. So they are supporting these women. They're collecting money to support these women who are under in this vulnerable situation. So it coincides that this happened with a visit of the president to New York, to the UN. So it was then promoted by the Human Rights Watch and by the other organizations. And when he arrived to the UN, he found it there in front of him. And this is all because of the network of the women and what they are doing, and because they are taking their reference at the universal human rights and women's rights and discrimination against law, against discriminating against the CEDAW, discriminating against women. So all this as points of reference in filing their case. And this takes less than a week. Because when he finds it there in front of him in the UN, he asked his government just to forget about it and just to take it and to withdraw the decision. So in these cases of vulnerability, when women are vulnerable, they need a reference so that they can get out of a certain situation which is recognized internationally. And this is why sometimes it is needed. It is, one of the feminists was saying this is like strategic essentialism, so you need sometimes things like this. But having said this, that has nothing to do with how you look at the whole project. Has nothing to do. You need to decide for yourself what approach you are taking in the women question. All things are clear, so no confusion. So this is for this, and I refer to. And then again, this is related to whether we are taking. We're talking about now gender justice. Why don't we talk about justice in general in the society? And again, it depends on which paradigm you are believing in and which paradigm you think is good. Because if we are taking a women question as a whole, as part of the whole society, okay, you are talking about your source and why we are doing that. And we're looking at it as a whole, as Muna Abul Fadl is saying, or as Zainab Al-Alwani is saying, and you connected it to the whole, then you are not talking about a partial incidence. You are not tackling the vulnerability of women in this part or in this part, or women against violence against women in this house or in that house or in this country or in that country. No. You are tackling the women question within a whole. So you are talking about justice, not only gender justice, but you are talking about justice in general in society, and to connect it to the higher objectives of the Quran as they explain it. So this is from my side.
Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I will tackle the question that was asked by Sister Maryam about the purpose of the maqsad behind, having maybe gender differences, or having maybe two different genders or two different entities, and having also texts that are maybe sometimes could be seen as problematic, you know, in the way we understand them, etc. I think the question here about why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala create male and female is much broader than only the question of male and female. I think it's the question of why Allah created human beings different. So it's not only about male and female, it's also about races, it's also about, you know, differences in wealth and differences in maybe physical also abilities and intellectual abilities, etc., etc. So I think it touches upon this, you know, this broad question. And I think this question was answered explicitly when it is about male and female and about different tribes. Explicitly the verse says, and here we come again to al-illa. You know, when I was talking about illa, I love usul fiqh, so I'm sorry for that. When I was talking about illa, I said there is masalik al-illa, ways to identify al-illa. The first way is maslak al-nas, and here we have other subcategories. And the first maslak al-nas is that the text explicitly says that this illa or this ruling was established for this illa. And then we have others like al-iman. Here is an explicit indication that the creation of male and female is for this illa, explicitly. يا أيها الذين آمنوا يا أيها الناس إنا خلقناكم من ذكر وأنثى وجعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل لتعارفوا. لي here لام التعليل, which means is a lam that says why. So here the illa is immediately indicated and says لتعارفوا. لتعارفوا, which means so we created you male and female and different tribes. Why? In order for you to learn to know each other. And some scholars says التعارف means التعاون. Why should you learn to know each other? In order to collaborate. So it's a part of your mission to collaborate. And in another verse we find similar answer. وَرَفَعَ بَعْضَكُمْ فَوْقَ بَعْضٍ دَرَجَاتٍ لِيَبْلُوَكُمْ. So here people are different, you know, why? In order to test you. So here, before coming to those differences in gender, in color, in race, in wealth, in, you know, physical appearance, etc. Before that, actually, human being is one. There is no difference. خلقكم من نفس واحدة وجعل منها ثم جعل منها زوجها. He created you from one nafs, one entity, and then he made out of it its pair. Which means that actually, if we ponder upon this verse, the ruh is asexual. How do you say this?
Ungender.
Has no gender. The ruh has no gender. من نفس واحدة, one, you know, one entity, one reality, and then ثم جعل منها زوجها, which means that ontologically, man and woman, or in the ruh, there is no gender. And so when, you know, this ruh comes into this world, you know, we talked about al-istikhlaf, which is a mission where human beings should be a vicegerent and should be, you know, managing certain things. Well, here a part of this is that he should manage these differences. He should manage the differences. ثم جعل منها زوجها, manage these differences in order not only to purify himself, and here we can refer to a verse where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قل للمؤمنين يغضوا من أبصارهم ويحفظوا فروجهم ذلك أزكى لهم. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is referring to one, you know, difference between man and woman, and he says to the believers to lower their gaze and to preserve their ويحفظوا فروجهم, to preserve their, you know, private parts, which means that, you know, this is the gender related issue. ذلك أزكى لهم. This is pure. This is closer to purity for you. It's closer to the purity of your humanity, because if you leave your gender overruling, then you will lose a part of your humanity, because this is what is consisting you. And so this relation between man and woman, you know, the one reason why you should lower your gaze is because that, you know, you're both from the same nature and you're both equal ontologically. And if if this gender difference become overruling, then it will cover who you really are as a human being. And this is where another verse Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يا أيها النبي قل لأزواجك وبناتك ونساء المؤمنين يدنين عليهن من جلابيبهن ذلك أدنى أن يعرفن فلا يؤذين. O Prophet, say to your wives and your daughters and the woman of the woman of believers to يدنين عليهن من جلابيبهن, to, you know, to let down over themselves, you know, their clothes, so to cover themselves. ذلك أدنى, this is closer, this is more appropriate, أن يعرفن, to be recognized. فلا يؤذين, and then they will not be harmed. يعرفن, to be recognized how? To be recognized as a human being. Because maybe your physical difference as a woman will make that the man will look at you not as a human being. He will not look at, you know, this as an object. Would look at, you know, will reduce you. He will reduce you to what your what he sees. He will reduce you to, because the man, you know, his reality. He's, you know, he's different. His attraction towards woman is different than the attraction of woman towards man. So he is able, the man. So the fault is the man, not you. You know, we are the problem, not you. So the problem is that the man may, you know, reduce you to what he sees. So this is better so that you be recognized, so that the men recognize you as who you really are. I don't say it's only related to men. It's also for women, because, you know, the problem is that, you know, your body, your physical appearance may reduce you. Not only in the eyes of the man, but for you also. And this is for the man as for the woman. If my physical appearance gets such an importance that, you know, I'm obsessed with it, right, then I can, you know, this my ontological entity, my inner humanity can be covered also. Right. And this is the way of covering fitra also for me. But it's also for you, of course. But it's the first priority for both. So if I reduce you, you know, to your appearance, you know, then, you know, it's in both cases, for you and for me, it's, you know, it's covering my fitra. For me, it's covering my fitra. This is why it's azka. It's better to purify yourself. And covering your fitra means that you get away from God and from your humanity. So in both cases, it's related to God. No, but the point is for man and woman to be closer to God. Right. For both of them. I was referring to several verses, you know, verses where, you know, it's about being recognized as who you really are. So, and verses also that are, it's also for yourself, because if you are obsessed with your appearance and to be recognized, you know, to be recognized as how you look, then the problem is essentially your problem, because you will reduce yourself also to how you look, and you will spend your whole life to taking care of this appearance and not taking care of who you really are inside. So the problem is at both sides. No, it's before. وَقُلْ لِلْمُؤْمِنَاتِ يَغْضُضْنَ مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِنَّ وَيَحْفَظْنَ فُرُوجَهُنَّ etc. No, and then وَقُلْ لِلْمُؤْمِنَاتِ يَغْضُضْنَ مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِنَّ وَيَحْفَظْنَ فُرُوجَهُنَّ.
But the action is towards man first before.
Yeah. Okay, now I understand. Yes. So the problem essentially, first of all, is with the man. Yeah. But here the verse that I was referring to, like I said, ذَلِكَ أَدْنَى أَن يُعْرَفْنَ. So here the illah, it's the illah that is given by the text. ذَلِكَ أَدْنَى أَن يُعْرَفْنَ فَلَا يُؤْذَيْنَ. Without talking to this verse specifically, globally, of course, is not to be submitted to this physical appearance, not to be submitted, you know, to how the man wants us, to conceive us and to see us, etc. There is a divergence between the scholars. Should you cover when you pray or not?
No, but
the scholars does not agree. All of them. Some of them, they say that you should. So I don't know. I know that maybe some of you doesn't know all the diversions in the fiqh, but they are there. But I did never say that this is the first reason and this is the second. I'm not saying this, you know. Yeah. I'm saying, of course, you know, even man, as man, they have to free themselves from everything that is holding them back from being who they intrinsically are as human being. And this can be my body, this can be everything. So the first objective is to free yourself. This is the first objective. So this is for men and women. So I'm not saying there is a priority, so you should wear hijab for men. No, your priority as an individual is to free yourself from everything that is obstructing you from being, from returning to the humanity of your being, to who you really are as a human. So this is the priority, anyhow, and not, you know, what you are doing is to free yourself and not to free men. But you know, but. Okay, so actually I wanted to come there, but I will not be able to do this. I wanted to go from there, from one entity as a human, and then from different, ibtila'at and different. But anyhow, I will not do this in this exercise, and I will go straight to your question. I'm not very strong in going straight to the point, but anyhow, yes, of course, here again the question of the text and different interpretations, different understanding is not a coincidence. God, if he wanted, he could make the Quran and the Sunnah, very clear. No need to think and to do research and to compare and to study in order to understand. He could have do that. For example, in a verse in the Quran says, وَالْمُطَلَّقَاتُ يَتَرَبَّصْنَ بِأَنفُسِهِنَّ ثَلَاثَةَ قُرُوء. The divorced woman, they have to wait, a period, la période de viduité in French, I don't know how do you call this in English, a period where they have to wait 3 periods before, before having the right again to marry and before getting out of the marriage, being officially, divorced. Here, al-qur in Arabic means 2 things: 3 periods of menstruation or 3 periods of, how do you say it, tohr, which means, where you're not menstruating. So here we have the scholars since the beginning. There was divergence on what does it mean until today. We did not finish, and we have books and writings and research about this, and it's not finished. Why Allah? Why didn't He just be clear? Why just be clear? Use 3 tohr or 3 hayd. Was Allah able to do this? Of course. Why did He use the word that is polysemic? Why did He use a word that is polysemic? Why? Because He's telling you, diverge. Go diverge. You have to diverge, and you have to look, and you have to do research. And this is how the early Muslims, they developed several disciplines, grammar, and the disciplines of the language, and disciplines of the critic of the usul and the critic of the hadith, etc., etc. The whole Islamic civilization emerged because there was an Islamic thinking emerged because there was a need to understand the text, and this is how you evolve. And in another verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, ولو بسط الله الرزق للناس لبغوا في الأرض ولكن الله ينزل بقدر لبغوا في الأرض ولو بسط الله الرزق للناس لبغوا في الأرض ولكن ينزل بقدر ما يشاء. So which means that if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would have just opened rizq, which means His gifts to human being, just without any limit. For example, you can exploit nature and the richness that there is without having the need to develop tools and to think how to study geology, for example, to get the richnesses out of the earth, etc. He could have done this. Everything is just at reach, but then then corruption would be on earth. So, it's needed for you as a human being to develop yourself intellectually, to help each other, to get to the answers and to seek for the answers. This is one of the wisdoms why we have this. Or else, we will not. This is in revelation and in creation, the same thing. The same thing that you find in creation, where it's not, that easy to use this creation. Well, it's the same thing in revelation, because the point is to think, the point is to develop yourself, etc. I think this is one of the reasons.
So Bismillah. I had 3 questions, I think, and I just wanted to react on some of the comments that I heard. The first was about what you were asking about the test and is it a test? I think that that's a critical question, but not only about women. It's really about what Shawqi was saying in the way we are dealing with the text. And we have to take things very seriously when it comes to the Quran and our understanding of the Quran. In fact, God's way with the last revelation is very strange, intellectually speaking. It's an internal text responding to historical situations. In itself, this is opening a huge intellectual challenge. Saying the very meaning of this text is based on eternal, immutable principles, but the great majority of the text is answers to specific historical questions. So it means that from the very beginning, you cannot get the very essence of the text if you don't understand the meaning of history. And you don't understand the meaning of history if you don't understand that there is a divine pedagogy in the way he's teaching us from where you start to where you have to go. So the Quran is not about a closed book, it's a movement. It's taking the people from somewhere to go, you have to go that direction. Follow him, he started the way, now you have to carry on. And my silence, it's out of rahmah. It's my mercy towards you. Why? Because you will carry on facing challenges, scientific challenges, historical challenges. Rahmatan bikum bighayri nisyan. Allah is saying that in the hadith it is said, he kept silent on things out of mercy, not out of forgetfulness. Meaning what? It's the movement here. And now we know why. We know now the power of science is telling us the text is giving you the principle, not the final answer. Between the principle and the final answer, there is your mind. Wake up. Get it. Get the right understanding. But based on what? On the right way of thinking. What is the right way of thinking? Where are you going to get the right way of thinking? Only with your mind? No. Intellectual humility with the light in your heart. No way of thinking right if your heart is without light. So in order to carry on the whole process, keep the light in your heart and wake up your mind. And then you have the project, the movement, and it's exactly the same with women. Today, the new neuroscientific knowledges are telling us things about what is in the text that we didn't know. And in fact, this is why I like the question about, are we starting with liberating ourselves for God or from men? Anyone who is realistic is say both. God is telling you from men to come back to me, and you will go beyond men. Because this is life. You are not angels. You are human beings. So you have to deal with men. And men have to deal with women. And then what you have here is to understand something which is, why do you think today that you have 2 things that are part of something which is trying to destroy reality? 2 dimensions in the world culture. What I told you first, no reality, no gender. This is one. Second, the world culture is about feminization of men. Is that what we are expecting from men now is to be attracted by the same things as women? Why? Because this is why you are becoming a commodity, an object. We make money with this. So the way you appear, it's for the consumerist society, the way we are going to make money. And the more the men are going that direction, the more money we are going to make. Get that? So that's very important. And at the same time, what we know today is that emotionally speaking, زُيِّنَ لِلنَّاسِ حُبِّ الشَّهَوَاتِ, that men are emotionally less strong than women. So at the surface of your being, there is something biological in nature and in woman making you more having this tendency to have a specific look, while the men are attracted by that. You can say, no, that's not what we have now, with some people are saying that's not true. Look at it transculturally. What is the specific role of women when it comes to appearance, look? Why is it that 80% of everything which has to do with publicity is with women, the way you look? Why is it? And now we are shifting towards men. Why? Is there a cultural secret here? There's something which is biological. And Allah is telling you, in fact, for me, and in front of human being, the true feminist act, meaning I'm not going to let you look at me as a body, is cover yourself, is modesty. It's a very strong, powerful, modern statement about liberation. Because at the end of the day, faith is about liberation. So it's really much about this. But saying to the men, be careful. Be careful. When the society is pushing you to react as a woman as to the way you appear and you look, there is something wrong in the whole biological process, which is what is happening now. And you become a commodity. And there is a relationship between gender and economy. Disturb the whole settings and you are going to make money with this. And this is what is happening. So I think that we have to go deep in this to understand why, for example, the way even, in the way I'm reading the Quran today with the knowledge that I got from science on what are the new discoveries about even the way our brains are working. That now the most accurate discoveries about there are differences between women's brains and men's brains. So now you can say, no, but that's it. So why are you relying on science when it suits you? And not what things are coming out of it. And I think that the Quran, with the silent, what was the test, it's now a gift. Make up your mind. Think about it, why it is like this. What at the same time, it starts with men to lower your gaze, and it starts with women by saying they are protecting you. Why? Why is it that it starts with women to protect, and it starts with men, you have to protect yourself? Why? Why do we have all this? And I think that there is a room here for our interpretation and to understand the historical movement and also the challenges. So I don't think it's true to say, you know what, so the liberating process, the spiritual liberating process, it's for both of us. Are we going to follow the same route? No. The spiritual process of liberation for women is quite different. So this is why I really think that there is something which is essential in the way women should read the Quran. But it's a liberating process. How are you liberating yourself? From your ego and some intrinsic characteristics of who you are. Now you can deny this. You can deny, I don't care about the way I look. Come on. No, you didn't say that. I'm not talking to you. I'm responding to a general question. But this is why to all this discussion that we have now, I don't want to come to the discussion only about the legal dimension of is the headscarf a prescription or not. For me, it's obvious, coming from the Quran. But that's not the point. It's deeper than that for me. It's deeper than that. It's the real liberation process that we are bringing at the center of the West. And anyone who is coming to me, in the name of we are weak and then we take... No. That's not going to work. I don't follow that. I think it's very dangerous. So that's my position. But I don't take it as something which is a legal answer. Come with what, how... No, it's deeper than that. I see a wisdom, hikmah al-hukm, is deeper than this. And I would say that, and it's coming from people who are working on Frantz Fanon? He's working, it's coming from the very economic side of the whole spectrum. See, the relationship with the Muslim is two things. The relationship with the Quran and women. The colonizers are going to target two things. Your relationship to the Quran and women. Ask yourself why. Now, having said this, I would be the first to say, by no any authority, the headscarf or the way you dress or the way you have is going to be imposed, because it could be exactly the opposite of the liberating process. You cannot impose a liberation spiritual process. You can't do that. So it's about you. Then you can be liberated without going that way, because some are wearing the headscarf, but they are not still quite liberated, to the point that what we saw in economy, we are seeing it with the headscarf now in the United States of America, with all this fashion of the new way of wearing the headscarf. So it's full of makeup, but the headscarf is there. So halal makeup, halal everything, which is completely based on the economy of seduction and consumerist society, but with the headscarf, which is the distortion of everything. It's as bad as distorting the very meaning of fasting during Ramadan and eating twice during the night. You don't get the whole thing. So I think it's deep what we are the challenge here. So I would put all this discussion into something which is the world culture, based on why Allah in the Quran is telling us, look at the process in history and try to get the meaning. And we can't do it without the human agency. This is why I'm saying to all the Muslims, you cannot get the right understanding of the Quran if you don't take human sciences and all the sciences and experimental science and seriously. Look at how it works. Why is it? Why is it that the power of the consumerist society is dealing with our instincts, our desires, and our biological constitutions? We'll take it from you, from there. This is why you have psychologists working with the publicity and advertisement to say how it works. How are we working? To the point that all the big danger of anything which has to do with the new social networks on internet, it's exactly working on this. You don't realize that the fact that you are clicking on this on internet, it's not something which is intellectual. It's your desire. It's your instinct. They'll say, they got you here. Come. We'll take you from there. Because you are becoming a commodity. Because you think, and we saw you not thinking. And we make money out of this. And even political decisions. It's going very far. It's very serious here. So why the Quran is silent about this? Can you just imagine at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, an internal book talking about all these details? It's not impossible. So even the Quran is opening rooms, and 90% of the Quran is about interpretations and opening rooms for a better understanding of the challenges. And there is a wisdom here. And I would say that today, if you read the Quran about what he said about women and men, you get the wisdom. You understand why. It's all about liberating yourself from what they are trying to do with you. So I would come to this discussion not only about the legal. I think we have to be very deep in this. And any one of us in this room, ask yourself, what are the reasons and the structure of your personal alienation? And then try to free yourself from there. Don't ask halal, haram. Ask yourself, just take the mirror of your own consciousness and ask yourself, in this world, where are you alienated? What is the problem? And then the Quran will answer. But don't cheat. Don't pretend. Don't try to avoid. All of us, we have to do that. So I really think that this is the question. So this is one thing. And then the last thing that I wanted to say about feminism, I got what you were saying. But on this, I'm at the same time more simple in the definition and more demanding on the project. Feminism, at the very beginning, was one position, and it became an ideology, to the point that from within the West, it was criticized as a white ideology by, for example, Kimberley, Sinsho, and all the people who are producing, for example, the transsectionality project, which is great, very important. And I very much what they were doing, the black feminist, for example, what she tried to do. But the point was, facing the structure of discrimination within a society based on ideologies or based on religious interpretations. Does it exist in Islam? Yes. Of course it exists. It exists because mainly male were reading, and then in patriarchal societies. Are we denying that this is a case? I don't deny this. I think it's right. Do we have now to question this reading through the culture made by or produced by males? I say yes. So I don't have a problem with the notion of feminists coming back to the structure of resisting this. Now, do we have to, and can we add something when we say Islamic? I would say, for example, can we rely on the Quran or al-Ahadith to produce something which is critical towards cultural readings and social readings, yes, we can. Of course we can. And so I don't have a problem. I'm not going to let the West colonize a notion against something that I think we have to do. We have to work as Muslims against anything which is the male colonization of the scriptural interpretations from a patriarchal, for example, culture. And this is the problem that I have, for example, with the Salafi, who are thinking that the Arab cultures are the only right cultures when it comes to read an Arabic text, which is wrong. It's problematic. So do we have to work on this? Yes. So I would say that from where I am, I'm a feminist. Get it? I'm a feminist. I'm going to struggle for the rights and the reinterpretation, but not in the way, I'm not going to accept the way the structural things were imposed, for example, by the white middle class. But I like the fact that I have black women saying, you know what? When it comes to women, ask her gender, yes, ask her class, and ask her color. Because when you are black and poor and a woman, these are the transsectional reality where she's going to be discriminated. They are right. They are right. And even for us, remember, it happened for us with a man. Remember, he was a slave, he was tortured, and he ended up as a black man to call the people to come to the most important pillar of Islam. In the story of Bilal, you have intersectionalities. Making him be the voice. And only one thing did the difference. My skill, my voice. No one is going to dispute this. Black or not, poor or not, this is where I am. And I think that we have to understand that it's a very powerful liberating process. That Islam came from from a black, poor, disenfranchised, and he's calling the people. Come, to what? To your own salvation. I'm a black. Wow. The voice, Bilal's voice. If you get this, this is why we understand why in our understanding of the role of women today, by all the standards of the studies today, we understand that part of our survival will be to get this right with women within. Because in today's world, the resistance to the emotional driving forces that are bringing people to this crisis, and we have a men's crisis now, it's something that is also to rely on men, on women in our struggle and to come together. So I'm taking all this very seriously, but I'm not following all this discussion about only the legal thing. It's a bigger thing. And get me right, I'm not underestimating the legal. I'm taking the legal seriously, but within the big picture. And I understand, for example, I had a discussion with some women saying, I don't like the notion of feminism. That's fine. I'm not going to struggle for that, as long as we accept the very meaning of what we are talking about. So العبرة بالمسميات لا بالأسماء. So we are not just talking about. I would talk about the substance of the word and trying to get this. No. That's it.